Did you grow up with taboo words that couldn't be uttered in your house, or at least in the presence of your parents? Curse words, perhaps? Yeah. I had a couple, and one was actually something I imposed on myself. Don't worry, it's nothing too scandalous. The word was creative. Now I know what you're thinking. What's so bad about the word creative? Let me tell you a story. One day in kindergarten, I was so excited to tell my mom about what I did for art class. And so right when I got dismissed, I held on to my paper and never let go. And once my car reached the outside of my house, I bolted out the door, ran up the stairs, sped to my mom's room, and showed her this painting that I did using okra, the vegetable. So she picked up the paper, squinted, and said, "You're not really that creative." Now, you may think that my mom was just being harsh and that kindergarten is supposed to be a time of sunshine and rainbows, doing silly things and being whoever you wanted to be. But kindergarten for me brings back crushed dreams and crushed okra. Now, I did not become an okra hater. I still ate all my vegetables. But I hated hearing the word creative because it was a reminder of something that I lacked. And I wanted to be good at everything. Now, I moved on. I had to accept that my childhood dream of becoming an artist was over. But there was something about this idea of creativity that kept haunting me. And so today, I'm here to tell you what it's like to come to terms with the term creativity. Through the years, my attempts to be on par with my friends were useless. They were fantastic at sketching landscapes, painting, designing clothes. Instead, I loved to sing and play guitar. I fell in love with stage performance when I found my footing in theater. One of the first few things that we were told when I joined the drama club was this quote: "Love the art in yourself. Love the art in yourself, not yourself in the art." This was a quote from the Russian theater master Stanislavski. Our theater club moderator used this as a reminder to not let the glory and attention get to our heads. It was a reminder to accept whatever role we were given, because there were no small roles, and to add our own magic with grace and humility. Now, I went to an all-girls school, which meant that we had no boys to rent or borrow. And so, with a voice that could go as deep as this, of course, I would always play a male. The only times I didn't were when I had to wear a skirt because it was already made, when I played a nun, because we were all nuns, Sister Act, and my personal favorite, when I was a cow into the woods. I thoroughly enjoyed playing all of these roles, but there was one role in particular I was never prepared for. In my final year in this club, I became the president, and when I found out, my moderator pulled me aside and said, "Congratulations! For this year's show, Matilda the Musical, you got the role of creative director." Now, at this point in my theater career, I was positive I could take on any role. I had gone from 60-year-old man to 6-year-old boy to sickeningly cute cow. But creative director, creative plus me equaled disaster. But she reminded me of the mantra, love the art in yourself, accept the role that you were given. And so I traded memorizing lines for conversations with my production crew on set design and costumes, which they sketched, don't worry. I conceptualized choreography, and I essentially directed my entire cast for this production. Somewhere along the way, I tricked myself into thinking, this is not so different from just being a plain actor. I didn't have to start from scratch. I had everything that I needed. And perhaps I have Mr. Roald Dahl to thank. Roald Dahl is the author of Matilda. He also wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, if that's more familiar. When he was 9, he suffered a harsh beating from his school headmaster for some mischief that he had caused. He endured many years in this boarding school under this horrifying matron. But of course, he grew up, he became a father, he became one of the best storytellers of all time. This boarding school experience was actually the inspiration for Matilda, a story of rising up to bullies. Now, I did not have to pull from any traumatic childhood experiences. Not that I had any. The okra story does not count. Roald Dahl had the story of Matilda already written, and people from Broadway and West End reconceptualized it into a musical. The script was ready, the songs were there. I had everything that I needed. So in life, when you are thrown a narrative, a role to play, a job description in an industry that serves as your set, with all the materials you need, can you even be called creative? Despite having the term attached to my role, I could hardly identify as creative. I did feel a spark when I saw the production come to life on stage, but at the end of the day, this was an ensemble performance of a story already told by so many others before me. I let this be my final curtain call as I moved on to business school and pursued a corporate career. Next chapter, instead of Broadway musical characters, I leaned into the lives of famous businessmen. Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, is a creative genius. He was very interested in spirituality and Zen Buddhism. And once on a trip to India, he realized that people there did not respect intelligence as much as they did instinct. To arrive at consciousness, it was not so much about rational thinking, but about intuition. This was the core leadership principle that allowed Steve Jobs to propel Apple to success. Who said 1,000 songs in your pocket was not possible? Steve Jobs whipped out the iPod. See, for Steve Jobs, innovation emerges when you take away constraint. Meanwhile, when I joined the workforce, I was in the playground of constraint. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I wasn't in marketing or in PR where you could pitch ideas. I was in the operations function of a bank, highly routinary, highly regulated. I once had to make sense of this lengthy, messy code that was passed on to me by someone who ran away and resigned. And yes, the code just kept returning errors. So I had to rewrite this code, clean it up, and reflect a new logic that came with a new regulation. So after months of debugging and testing, and debugging and testing, it finally worked. And my senior leader said, we could use some of your creative problem solving for more projects. Wow, creative opportunities. At this point, I was mature enough to not flinch when I heard the word creative. But all I could think was, I'm just a code janitor cleaning up your process. So I stomached more of these projects, and I noticed I just kept getting told what needed to be done within specific parameters. So in life, when you are given the same problems to solve every day, and you're looking for purpose, but you can't find it, what's there to love? I kept telling myself, love the art in yourself. Accept the role that you were given. I could accept this role because I was getting paid, unlike in amateur theater. But why did it feel like there was hardly any spark left in me? Every time I cracked a code, I thought I would gain a sense of fulfillment, but instead, I got more work, and I got burnt out. I told myself I should have treasured my high school days more, if that was the closest I could get to not feeling a sense of creativity, but just a sense of passion and drive and energy. So this time I said there were no more outside triggers. I needed to find and reclaim the art in myself that I could love, and this time I would give myself the role. So one day I decided to attempt being something 12-year-old Mika always wanted to be, but was too afraid to try. And so I got my laptop, and I started doing this. Now, I never learned how to play the piano, but I tell people sometimes I play the keyboard because with this typing keyboard, I figured out how to do this. Yeah, I did not learn how to play the piano at all. But one day, I managed to pull off something that sounds a lot like this. You know, when Beethoven would compose his symphonies, he went through many half-written drafts. You know how he wrote for Elise? Well, he first fell in love with his student, who was not too good with the piano, so he started off with some simple notes to appeal to her. And then one day, he found out she was engaged. She had a fiancé. And so out of heartbreak and frustration, Beethoven revisited this piece and continued on such that it would be impossibly complex for her to play. It is also impossibly complex for me to play, so I will spare your ears. The song and the story behind it, a journey really. But the behind-the-scenes process is just as arduous, because Beethoven would make so many sketches on sheet music, constantly revising, editing, erasing, trashing, writing again. And this went back and forth, progressively getting harder as he lost his hearing, because he could only imagine what the symphonies would sound like. But still, his music shined through. I am not particularly fazed about my own music production process because of Beethoven's story. Mine is just about as painstaking, because again, I never learned how to play the piano, and I am terrible at reading sheet music. So every song is a trial and error process. Pressing keys, clicking controls, playing around with features. And every session, as I like to call it, would start out with me opening the program with so many ideas, trying to channel all my energies. I would reach my peak, fall into a rut, try out something completely different just to practice a different technique. I go back and forth, cut and paste, try to apply what I learned here and there. And amidst all the roles that society and life and work and school throw at me, I could always come back to this one. And I can tell you the adrenaline rush is like no other. Love the art in yourself. What is something that makes you feel alive? What is something that enables you to do it in your own way? And in that moment, are you not embodying creativity? Teaching myself music production was my way of reclaiming the mantra, love the art in yourself. Not because I fell in love with music again, and music is a form of art. No. I discovered that all this time, I was too focused on accepting the role that I was given, that I hadn't stopped to realize I had been adding my magic to everything I do all along. The way I made my ochre painting, the way I breathed my artistic vision of Matilda to life on stage, the way I approached my projects at work, and everything else life threw at me. Because creativity is about creating art, but it is also interpreting the art of others. Creativity is breaking barriers, but it is also the problem-solving power within constraints. And most importantly, creativity is not an evergreen state of being. Creativity comes in the little things you do in your own way. The little bursts of life that remind you to love the art in yourself. And when you do learn to love the art in yourself, sometimes you find you can be so much more. So from coming to terms with creativity, this has been a journey of coming to terms with me. When I finished my first composition, it took me back to kindergarten, because I bolted out my room, ran to my mom, handed her the right side of my earphones, and we had a listen together. She looked at me wide-eyed this time. It's you? Everything? All locked up? Never knew you could be this creative. Neither did I. It's a complex self-discovery process. But that's okay. Because even if you don't recognize or acknowledge it, maybe not yet at least, I know there is a story, a magic, an art within you that you can call your own. And I sincerely hope you find it in you to love the art in yourself too. So I invite you to have a think. For you, what is it like to come to terms with creativity? Or better yet, what is it like to come to terms with your own version of who you could be? Thank you very much.